Hey there, howdy. So I'm going to read this one. It's my Bible stories, The Promised Land. The walls of Jericho. God's commandments were written on 2 stone tablets. They were kept in a special wooden box. For many years, the Israelites searched for their own land and carried the box with them. With their new leader, Joshua, they traveled on to the town of Jericho. But the gates were locked. The people would not let the Israelites in. God then told Joshua what to do. Carry the box around the town's walls 7 times. So they did, and at the same time blew their long trumpets. The walls of Jericho came tumbling down. The new land. There was a war between the Israelites and their neighbors, the Philistines. The Israelite general Samson loved Delilah. She was a Philistine. She wanted to know what made Samson so strong. He told her that God had given him his great strength, but only as long as he didn't cut his hair. When Samson was asleep, Delilah cut off his hair. The guards took him to the temple. Samson begged God to give him his strength back. He pushed and pushed at the pillars of the temple. Then the roof fell down and the Philistines were crushed. In Israel, a family fell on hard times. Soon all that were left were Naomi and her son's wife. Her name was Ruth. Naomi wanted to return to her old home in Bethlehem. She told Ruth to leave her, but Ruth would not let Naomi live alone. Where you go, I will go and take care of you, she told Naomi. In Bethlehem, Ruth looked after Naomi well. She worked hard in the fields to gather food. Boaz was a rich farmer in the area. He fell in love with Ruth because she was so kind and gentle. Boaz and Ruth were married and took care of Naomi together. They all praised God. For many years, Samuel was the leader of the Israelites. But Samuel grew old. The Israelites decided that they wanted a king to lead them. God was angry and told Samuel to warn them. A king will make slaves of you all, said Samuel. The Israelites would not listen to Samuel. The people chose Saul to be king. At first, Saul was a wise and a good king. God helped him win battles against the enemies, but Saul became very proud. He began to forget God's commandments. God sent the old Samuel to Bethlehem. There lived a young man called David. God had chosen David to be the new king. King David. There was another battle between the Philistines and Saul's army. One of the Philistine soldiers was a giant of a man. He was taller and stronger than everyone else. He challenged the Israelites to send one man to fight him, but he was so huge that they were all afraid. Suddenly, David stepped forward. He had no armor and only carried a sling. I will fight you, David cried. Goliath laughed because David was just a young boy, but David loaded his sling with a single stone and knocked Goliath to the ground. David was very popular, and Saul began to hate him. Saul told his son Jonathan, we must do something or the people will make David king instead of you. But Jonathan loved David like a brother and warned him, my father will try to kill you. He said, David escaped, and Saul chased after him with a huge army. One night, David crept into the king's camp and took the king's spear and water jug. Saul then realized that David could have killed him while he slept. Saul was sorry, and David became a friend. When Saul died, David became king. He ruled wisely for 40 years, ever since Jerusalem was been known as David's city. King Solomon. David's son Solomon was the next king. He was the wisest man in the land, and the people were happy. Solomon decided to build a temple to say thank you to God for taking care of them. It was a beautiful temple. When it was finished, Solomon had the box containing the commandments placed inside. God warned Solomon, "If you or your people disobey my laws, I will destroy the temple." After Solomon's death, the peace did not last. God saw that the people were breaking the laws and destroyed the temple. Daniel and the lions. In the kingdom of Babylon, there lived Daniel. The king of Babylon had bad dreams. Only Daniel could explain what they meant. The king began to think he was more powerful than God. The king said that everyone must worship him, but Daniel loved the true God and refused. The king threw Daniel into a den of lions. "Let your true God save you," he said. The next morning he expected to find Daniel dead. To his surprise, the lions were fast asleep. "A miracle," cried the king. "Now I see that there is only one true God." Jonah and the fish. God asked Jonah to go far away and preach to the people there, but Jonah did not want to go and tried to hide. He caught a boat, but a terrible storm blew up. Jonah jumped into the sea and was swallowed by a huge fish. He stayed in the fish's stomach for 3 days and nights. Then the fish threw Jonah onto the sand. Once again, God told Jonah to go. Jonah did as God asked and preached so well that all the people listened to God's word. But Jonah began to think that the people did not deserve God's kindness. He left the town and went out into the desert. God made a tree grow beside Jonah while he slept. Its shade protected him from the hot sun. Then God made the tree die, and Jonah began to burn in the sun. He asked God why he had killed the tree. God told Jonah that the tree was like the people. Without his love, they would shrivel and die. But with the love of God, the people would grow strong. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. Have a great day.